there are a number of people in my life who are telling me, Steve, you're doing good work, but you need to be a pastor again. You're made to be a pastor. And I was feeling that burning. And what really pushed me over the edge is when my kids started saying that to me. Dad, you need to be a pastor.
This is The Calling, a Family Life original podcast hosted by Steve Smith that features conversations with pastors who share about the triumphs and challenges they face in their personal and professional lives as they share the gospel. Our guest for episode 24 is Pastor Steve Dunmire, lead pastor at Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Painted Post, New York.
Every pastor I talk to, I mean, everybody, you talk to 100, you'll have 100 different stories. And I love, and I think God uses everybody's story to where they've gotten today. So how has God used you from, your life leading up to your current pastorship, lead pastor at Victory Highway? How have you seen God work from the beginning of your life even through today?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, thanks for the chance to be part of this. And it's great to talk to you, Steve. And yeah, it's an honor to be asked. God's been so good to me throughout my life, so much better than I deserve, and raised by faithful, loving parents who raised me in church from the start. Part of my John Wesley and his story, there was a family fire, and he was barely saved from the fire at the last second. So he was frequently called the brand plucked from the burning. I was born on a toxic waste dump in Niagara Falls, one of the worst environmental catastrophes in our nation's history, and was one of the lucky ones, one of the blessed kids to come out of that okay. And that was a traumatic thing for my family as I was born, to have two little boys in the middle of a toxic waste dump. But I think of myself as being a brand plucked from the burning, and I'm so grateful for the life that I've been able to have. I was so raised up in the church. Parents love the Lord, faithful, committed lay people in our church, always serving on boards and search committees. And when I was in high school, really we began attending a new church and encountered some people who were living the gospel in a way that I'd never seen fully before. Where I realized these people aren't just saying it, they're deeply committed to it with every core of their being. And shortly after, really, at the time, I thought that I was giving my heart to Christ. I think actually I was probably just committing myself to the life of discipleship. And not long after, sensed a call to ministry, and spent 3 years in part-time youth ministry, and then 3 years on the east side of Buffalo in the inner city, serving with my wife as the lead pastor of a church, and then another 8 years at the church in the South Towns of Buffalo, 7 years in higher education, 2 years at a large church up in Buffalo as teaching pastor, and now been here at Victory for the last 3 years, where we're just having an incredible time. And real big passion for me is helping people to experience the full life in Christ, to become full throttle disciples of Jesus. As I like to tell people here, I don't want to just help people become half-hearted or lukewarm disciples of Jesus, but full throttle disciples of Jesus. And that's the stuff that really gets me fired up and pumped up.
Now, I haven't asked this to any of the pastors in the couple of years I've done this podcast, but you pastor I would consider, I think most people would consider, a large church. I'm talking about numbers of people, but I think you'd be the first to say a larger church doesn't mean a better church. But each one, a large church, medium-sized church, however you define all those, a larger church has to have its own unique set of challenges. What are some that come to mind first? And as you can speak to others who pastor large churches, but also speaking to the ones with small churches and how that. I know this is a convoluted question, but large church doesn't mean better. But what are some of the challenges you face?
Well, so my first 11 years as a lead pastor were in smaller churches, and had Sundays where there was 15 people in church, and the excitement of the first time we broke 100 and some of those things in those churches. And so I like to say here, Victory's a larger church. We're running 12 or 1,300 right now every weekend, and I always tell people up front, I'm a small church pastor masquerading as a large church pastor. I'm figuring this out as I go. And there are some things that are consistent. There absolutely larger church isn't any better than a small church. It's just different. And I think the people challenges are always there. I had a mentor early in ministry who said that there are two types of problems in ministry: people problems and no people problems. And when he told me that at a time when we were leading a church of 20 or 30 people, and as that church began to grow, he said, you used to have no people problems, but you know what are coming next? People problems. And so I think that those things remain constant. Probably one of the unique challenges here is at times you said it feels like at times two congregations, staff that we lead, about 30 people, and then the congregation too. And those are, they overlap, but there's also two groups that I'm trying to shepherd and trying to care for as well. But I think one of the vantage points that I always talk about with our staff and with our ministry leaders is because we are a large church, I want to make sure that we're helping to resource and to help some of our other churches in the area. So whether that's being able to send pastors out to help fill a pulpit, or to share supplies or resources, or to invite pastors from other churches in for different things we're doing. Because I've been there and I know how there's limited resources, but it's been a real joy. I've loved every church I've gotten to serve, and got to go back to a smaller church I'd served previously in the last few months for a visit, and brought back so many sweet memories of the time we had there. Yeah, the biggest difference I'd say for me personally is I get to specialize more here. At a smaller church, when I was pastoring a church of about 150, you're just a jack of all trades. So I was leading worship and preaching every Sunday and shoveling the front step on Sunday morning. Here, I'm able to spend a little more time on a few focused areas. Yeah,
that leads me to my next question. I was thinking about this as you were talking, because there's a little self-inspection question, I guess, Steve, in that we're talking with Steve Dunmire, lead pastor of Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Painted Post, and we'll talk about the other campus in a second. But delegation, that's a tough word sometimes. And you talked about being the jack of all trades. Would you consider yourself, even before you were even a pastor, or as you're learning, are you good at delegating? And I would imagine you have to be good at a larger church.
I need to get better at it. And I've got some people in my life who help to remind me about that. I think I would like to think that the staff and the folks who work with me here would feel that I'm not micromanaging, that when we trust them with something, I trust them to run with it and not getting involved in the details. And even there are some times when people have maybe asked me to lead at a closer level in certain areas, and I've reminded them, nope, I trust you. I really mean it. And I've had some staff who've I can tell they hear me say, I trust you to do this. And they needed to see me back that up in action, to say, nope, I really fully trust you with this. You've got the authority to run with this area. It is helpful, I think, to have a broader skill set, to have an awareness of different areas. I've heard Andy Stanley say that the higher you rise up in any organization, the more incompetent you become, because the more you've got people working for you or with you who knew more than you do about their area. So that's a humbling thing to me to say. There are people on my team who are geniuses at things that I have no idea about, and so not to meddle in their areas and not to slow them down, not to be a bottleneck.
Yeah, that has to be I would imagine it has to be a constant challenge in that. Let's take you back to your beginnings of the smaller church, where you had to be, as you said, the jack of all trades, and to even at that point trust someone else, because you're like, they're not going to do it as the way it's supposed to be done. And that has to be a constant challenge and all the time.
Yeah, I think it was hard at a smaller church as the church is growing to feel like, I feel like I'd be getting a grade B on this task, but I'm afraid if I hand it off, it'll drop down to a C or D. Right. But and living with that intention, but recognizing, for the sake of the church, for the sake of the ministry, and for the sake of the person who can step into this, that for their flourishing, for the flourishing of the ministry, it's important to hand that off and to not be the be all end all of everything that happens in the ministry. But there are people who are waiting to step up. I've had conversations just in the last few weeks with people in our church who were interested in serving in a few areas, but had been holding back. And I asked, what's keeping you back? And they said, it's because it seems like it's covered. It seems like there's not a need. And so sometimes just letting a ball drop or letting a need present itself is all that somebody needs, the encouragement to step up and serve.
How about
I think some of the most, some of the most meaningful work that some of the most meaningful work people have done in their lives, and this is the case for my parents too, is the volunteering that they've done in their church and the chance to serve in really meaningful and significant ways. So I want our church to be a place where people can experience that.
Let's talk about multiple locations of church. That's becoming more popular over the last couple of decades. And speak to that a little bit. The Painted Post, Elmira, was that a tough decision when you go to multiple locations? And that's even more challenges, I suppose.
Yeah, so Victory made that move. Had been prior to my time, had been looking to go multi-site and had tried in a few different places, but it just never quite materialized. And then the opportunity in Elmira came about. And so that campus had been previously an established church that merged with Victory to become what is now our Elmira campus. And that launched in either January or February of 2020. Not an ideal time to start something new, right before pandemic locked everything down. But it's been really exciting to be able to look back and see where that ministry was prior to the merger, prior to becoming a campus, and to where it is now. A lot of life change happening there, people experiencing the life-changing power of Jesus. And it's been really, really meaningful to see life coming into that ministry. We just celebrated 100 years of that ministry in Elmira this past year. And to hear the stories of where things had been and some lean years for that church and to where it is now for our campus, it's really exciting. But the church I'd been at for just a couple of years up in Buffalo was also a multi-site church, and I think 5 campuses. And I believe in multi-site because as wonderful as I think our church is, we can't reach everybody. And as I tell our staff all the time, if our church in 20 years is bigger and healthier than it's ever been, but all the other churches in our region close, then we failed as a church. If we're bigger and stronger than we've ever been, but there are no other churches in our community, then we've flunked as a church. And so we need to be sending out people and sending out resources and helping to be partners with other churches. And we're not in competition with other churches in our community. We're in competition with the powers of darkness. And I think as I look at the need for multiplication, we can bring a lot of people into Sunday worship and programs at our physical church location in Painted Post, but that's just a fraction of the general population of our community. So one of the most effective ways to do that is through multiplication by starting new works in other places. And real quickly, when I've looked at the data and gone over this with other people about the success rate of church plants, which when you just drop a couple into a new community and ask them to start a new church, the success rate can work. This success rate is mixed. When there's a parent church that's helping to daughter that church, or a denomination or a group that's helping to resource that church and support them, the success rate goes up. But even still, it's difficult work. It's really, really hard. Whereas the success rate for new campuses of existing churches has been nearly 100%. And so what I've described to people is we just have limited time, limited resources. And so I want to make sure we're focused on the multiplication model that has the highest success rate, and success by means of it lasts, it endures. And so I believe in multi-site for that purpose, to be able to reach new communities and to reach new people in a way that maximizes with the limited resources and people that we have to be able to chase after those goals. But it's all about the Great Commission, reaching new people with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and trying to go to places to go to people who would not come to us, and to reach them. A real go mentality, not a come to us mentality, but we're going to go to you.
Talking with Steve Dunmire, lead pastor of Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Painted Post. And let's talk about the good news, bad news thing as far as worship services online church. Your thoughts on that? Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, so we've got, it's really interesting. When I first got here, I arrived in 2022 at Victory, and we were seeing online viewership drop consistently for a while as in-person attendance was growing. But now for the last year or so, we've seen online viewing go up while in-person attendance is growing up. And so that's been really interesting to me. At different times, I've had people say, is it time to cut the online services? Should we just cut it off and make people come in person? And I always think about one person when I answer that question. And I think about my father-in-law, who passed away a couple of years ago. A few years ago, we were out there to visit them, my mother-in-law and father-in-law. And Sunday morning came, I was on vacation, and my father-in-law was a shut-in at that point and unable to leave the house without a great deal of effort. And so because of that, my mother-in-law didn't get to go to church very often because she was home caring for him, a full-time caregiver for my father-in-law. And so I told my wife, take your mom and the grandkids to church. Let her go to church and show off her grandkids to her friends at church. I'll stay home with your dad and make sure that he's got everything he needs. And so we did that. She told me how their church, how to be able to watch the online service at their home. And the time came, it was the first time, this is like 2018, 2019, first time I really watched church online at home. And the time for the service came, and he came out, and he had his Bible on his lap, and he was singing along with every song. And he was talking to me about the message as the pastor was sharing the message. And it gave me a whole new perspective on what was happening with online services, that for people like my father-in-law, this was his only lifeline to his church in the last few years of his life. And I think for the vast majority of people who are online, there are some people who could come in person who aren't. The vast majority, it's people like my father-in-law, who the last few years of his life, that's his lifeline to his particular church. And I also find every Sunday there's people who come into church. It's their first time here. They walk in the door and they see me and they recognize me because they've been watching online for a few weeks. And so I think there's two groups. There's the people who physically, for health reasons or other reasons, can't be here, and this is a way for us to keep connected to them. It's also a chance for people who want to dip their toes in the water to be able to explore it. One last thing I'd say about it is as we were looking over some statistics and data from 2024, YouTube told us what our highest viewed service was in 2024. And I was really surprised at first. It was this random Sunday in January. I thought, why would that be the highest viewed service? And I realized it was a terrible snowstorm that Sunday, and our attendance was slashed what it would normally be. But to see that people took that chance on that Sunday, that they couldn't be here in person because of weather and because of roads, but they stayed connected with us because of the live stream. And so I'm a firm believer in the way that helps us to share the gospel with people, to expand our reach, and again to go to where people are, and hope that those who can will eventually be here in person. But I think it's an easier way for people that were thinking about going to church. I just had lunch with somebody yesterday who said they've been inviting their neighbor, and they've been watching online for a few weeks, and I think they finally came in person for the first time. But I think watching online helped them to have a sense of what they're going to be walking into. And at a church like Victory, we've got an incredible team who makes our online services really easy to watch, and the sound is good. And I give a lot of credit to some of the pastors of smaller churches who are doing it on a shoestring budget, and yet are trying to provide meaningful ways for the shut-ins in their church, and the elderly and the sick, and people who are checking out their church to see what's going on.
I'm talking with Steve Dunmire, lead pastor of Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Painted Post, New York. And let's talk about, I was going to say your favorite person, but that would be Jesus. But the second favorite person would be your wife. And I'm going to laugh a little bit because I've talked to so many pastors over the years, and a couple just recently, who said that before they became a pastor, the wife says, there's one thing I'm not ever going to be in my life, and that's the wife of a pastor. But then, this is called the calling, but then the wife knows that they're called to do that. Talk about that favorite earthly person of yours and the importance of the role of the wife of a pastor.
Yes, absolutely. My hero and my biggest supporter and the person I'm the biggest fan of. My wife's name is Tammy. We've been married for, this year, we're coming up on 24 years. So about 23 and a half years right now. And she's actually a pastor's kid. So her parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were all in ministry. And she was sure she was not going to go down that road. And then she met me and said, "Oh, Lord, what are you doing?" And so that's interesting for me, coming from a lay family of lay people, to marry into a family that's really has such deep history serving in ministry. And she's one of the things that continues to amaze me about my wife is we have 3 Sunday services every Sunday, 8, 9:30, and 11. And she sits with me every service, every Sunday. Not because I've ever asked her to, not because she has any sense of like duty to do it or a sense of like that she has to do it. But because she just is there to support me, and she knows it makes a difference for me to have her there with me. And when we went to 3 services, I thought she probably won't keep coming to all of our services when we went from 2 to 3, but she's continued to do that. And a big part of why she does that too is because she knows she loves to connect with people in our church and have conversations and get to know people who are new and follow people who've been in the hospital or going through challenges. And as much as I want to think that it's because she loves to hear me preach, I know a big part of it is because she wants to see the people. Yeah. The 3 rules of ministry, again, the same mentor early in ministry who told me that there's 2 types of problems in ministry. He said there's 3 rules in ministry: love the people, and love the people. And I don't know anybody who does that as well as my wife does. And I could not do what I do in ministry without her support. We've got 4 kids who are ranging in age from 13 to 20, 3 in college, and our youngest is in middle school. And one of the greatest joys for me is how much our whole family enjoys being in ministry together. When we came to Victory, this was not just something where my kids said, "This is Dad's ministry and I'm going to do my own thing." Our kids there are some Sundays where all 6 of us are serving in different areas of the church on Sunday morning, whether it's in tech or kids ministry or in worship, but everybody's serving in some form. And I don't take that for granted. It's been a huge blessing to me, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your kids. You said 4 from 13 to 20. What have you learned about, because they're pastors' kids. How did you navigate that journey, or did it just come organically that they wanted to serve? Was there ever talks along the way? There has to be certain pressures. I've never been a pastor's kid, but, how have you navigated that journey, and what things have you learned even from them?
Yeah, I think it's been really helpful to be married to a pastor's kid who gets it more than I do. And I give 100% of the credit for how good our kids have turned out to her. She gets all the credit. Anything that's gone wrong, I take the full blame for that. But she's been really sensitive to and making sure they don't feel any pressure. Even for a few years, so when they were very little, I was a lead pastor of smaller churches, and then went to work at Houghton University for 7 years, working in higher education. And I loved what I got to do at Houghton. But during my time there were a number of people in my life who were telling me, "Steve, you're doing good work, but you need to be a pastor again. You're made to be a pastor." And I was feeling that burning. And what really pushed me over the edge is when my kids started saying that to me: "Dad, you need to be a pastor." And I thought, good grief, how many middle schoolers are telling their dads that? And so I was so grateful for that. And we always told our kids, especially when we came to Victory, we told our kids, "We want you to serve. I want you to attend one service. We would love to see you serve in another service with people who are older than you or younger." Because I'm a firm believer that I came to Christ really deeply in my teen years, primarily because of the teens were in my life, my peers. But I think I stayed in Christ because of the adults in my life, the people who were older than me, who mentored me and took me under their wing. And so one of our big convictions has been for our kids to have deep roots in Christ. They need to be interacting with people who are older than younger than them in the church, so that they've got just different roots than those who only stay in their age group. And for our kids, that's worked out amazingly well. But we've never, we've tried to be sensitive in those seasons where they don't want to hang out, or when we're talking to people in the lobby and they're wanting to go home, to not force it, to not become, to never be overbearing in that, but to be sensitive to how they're feeling in those moments. And I'm really grateful. This particular, on this day, our kids love the church and are serving. And actually, I've got two boys, twins, who are freshmen at the university, and they're both pursuing the ministry. They're studying to be pastors themselves, which blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind that they're feeling that call. And they'll be way better pastors than I am.
Well, as we wrap up, one final question. Earlier in the conversation, you said just yesterday you had lunch. Not that it's surprising that pastors eat lunch, but the importance of getting away as opposed to having to do all the things all the time, and talk about the importance that you've learned over the years of, yes, getting some personal time, some me time to kind of take a deep breath every once in a while.
Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge and balance I'm trying to strike. For me, I heard great advice that one of the greatest ways to fight off burnout is having a hobby that you love and that causes you to lose track of time. And so for me, I'm a guitar player, and I find that on days when and there are days when it's just really heavy. There's leadership decisions that need to be made. There's people going through things in the church. There's conflict, and the weight can be really, really heavy. I find there's nothing quite in my life besides time with my family as playing the guitar and working on a song that's hard, trying to learn something that's hard. And I feel my blood pressure drop and feel my soul lighten up as I do that. But for me, I love time outdoors, love getting out and hiking. I love the Finger Lakes region. I love upstate New York. I'm born and raised in the Buffalo area. And so I love this part of the country and love the chance to get outside. And we try to do some travel as well.
Have you ever played your guitar while hiking? I'm sorry.
I haven't, but maybe I should think about that.
If you really want to relax and get away, start your own YouTube channel of guitaring while hiking. It could be something. Just consider it. You don't have to do it. Just consider it. Steve Dunmire, lead pastor of Victory Highway Wesleyan Church in Painted Post. Thanks so much for taking the time. Great advice. It's been a pleasure chatting. Thank you.
Yeah. God bless you, Steve. Thanks for this time.
You've been listening to episode 24 of The Calling, a Family Life original podcast. Be sure to click the subscribe button to get notified when future episodes are available. And if you think others will be encouraged by this podcast, you can share it on social media. Family Life's original podcasts, such as the Parable Podcast, Therese Talk, If That Makes Sense, 10 Minutes With, and the Rise Up Podcast can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or FamilyLife.org. Family Life is listener supported, and your faithful partnership makes ministry outreach through podcasts like this possible. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.